What's up, future husbands and wives? And welcome to the Dating Life Podcast. I'm Nate J. Clark, your Latter-day Saint dating coach, and I'm here to talk dating on the road to eternal marriage. Ganae, what's up? I'm so glad to have you on. How are you doing today?
I am so good. I'm so excited to be here. I really am so excited. I've been looking forward to this. I mean, I just cried myself to sleep the other night because I was like, I have so many relationship issues. But
Don't we
then
all?
I'll talk to Nate and it'll be fine. So yeah, I'm doing good.
I've been really looking forward to it ever since you texted me several weeks ago and you were like, hey, I've had some breakthroughs, I've had some things I've been learning, I've had some things I want to learn and do better on, and yeah, I've just been excited to hear the story. Did I hear right that you were thinking this might be like a multiple episode kind of a conversation, or were you just thinking one?
I think that it would be beneficial to have multiple episodes.
I think people, I think the more people can get of Ganae's story, the more they're going to not only enjoy it because you have a great personality, but they're also going to learn, the more that you are willing to share. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I am down for the ride. Let's do it.
Cool. Well, that being said, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself so
Yes.
the listeners can get to know you?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so hi everybody. I'm Ganae. I am 28 years old. I turned 29 in just a few weeks. In my head, I've been thinking to myself, like, girl's moving on to 29 already. And I am a musician, so I teach, write, perform, probably everything under the sun to at least make a little bit of money. And then I'm also a receptionist at a pediatrics office, so that's what I do with my time. Yeah. Is there anything else that I should share?
I think that's awesome. What would you how would you describe your experience in dating? Would you say you've been dating a while, on and off? Would you say you've had a little bit, medium? Just so our listeners know, how they can relate to your journey.
Yeah. Can I just start by saying I'm so embarrassed by it? And right now I'm learning how to create space for mistakes, I guess. I'm learning that shame is should not be a part of the story, and embarrassment shouldn't be. And I'm a spiritual, religious person, so I am learning to trust in my God throughout this process that mistakes are okay. But yeah, so my history of dating is a mess. And I meant to bring a little book. Well, a couple of years ago, I wrote out all of my relationships that I've ever been in to any extent, even just flings. And I wrote like the patterns to them because I started this course. It's by Rising Woman called Becoming the One. I don't know if they still have it, but it had me go through my patterns so that I could kind of learn why that is. And so it started. I started dating. I didn't date as a teenager. Dating was a no-go in my household. Group dates were okay, but I grew up abroad, so dating was just it wasn't like it is, I feel like, in the United States, especially in Utah where I live right now.
Wait, can I pause you for a second?
Yes.
I feel like you've told me before where you grew up abroad, and it may have been in multiple places, but I don't remember. What were some of the places you lived in?
Yeah, so I lived in, my childhood was in Kenya and Venezuela, and then my teenage years were in Belgium and India. So I was like I turned 16 when I was living in India, which that's the date that the age my parents allowed me to start dating on group dates. However, I'm going to just that was not a thing. That was not a thing in the middle of New Delhi, India, where I was attending the American Embassy School. I had beautiful friends and fun relationships, but dating was not a thing. And I had a crush on this one guy when I was 17. By the way, this is just an interesting random tidbit. When I was living in Kenya, in third grade, I had a crush on this kid, and I thought he was the cutest guy ever. And then 10 years later, or whatever it is, I'm living in India, and that same kid moved to my
No.
area. Yeah, in New Delhi. And we started dating. That was my first boyfriend. Um,
Well, I mean, how couldn't you after that kind of a happenstance? It's like it's meant to be.
I loved him in third grade, and I still love him in 11th grade. I mean, I also had another friend who I went to school with in second grade in Kenya, and he and I went to school together in India in 10th and 11th. I think some of the schools just in that world, sometimes you cross paths again in like
Yeah.
the foreign world. But anyways, yeah, it was wild. So he and I started dating. That was like my first boyfriend, and it was just a crazy. I felt a lot of guilt because of my own family rules that I wasn't allowed to have a boyfriend, but I really
Mm.
wanted one. So I didn't handle that situation well, and I hadn't been given the tools to. So hopefully that guy forgives me. I think I did reach out and apologize. Okay, that's another story. But so I started dating, I think when I was like 16 in an unhealthy way, right? And then, or at least I didn't know how to do it and I wasn't allowed to. So then I was kind of trying to do it under the table and then it wasn't working. So I just stopped dating because I was like, I'm not allowed to date in my head. Um, because there was no such thing as dating. It was like you're with somebody or not. So then my early 20s, I dated a ton. I was always out doing something with somebody. And I just had a ton of flings, never like long-term relationships. And totally broke hearts, got my heart broken many times. And so in my mid 20s, I was unofficially engaged to somebody. They proposed to me, they gave me a ring, but it was like a kind of, we'd like talked about it. I was moving to Japan to work for Disney at the time. And so he and I were like, yeah, we'll do this long distance thing. We got him a ticket to come out and do the official proposal
In
later.
Japan.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, because like you don't always, you know that you're gonna get married to somebody, but you're not like you're gonna wait for them to make it official with like this cute
Mm.
proposal. I mean, I had like my own little. We had talked about marriage, and he had given me my own ring, but it was gonna be like a big deal later when he came out. But he ended up meeting somebody else while I was out there, and so I mean, at the time I didn't know that he broke up with me, but it wasn't until like years later that I figured out that it's because he met somebody else. So, and immediately as I learned that, I received so much healing and closure because the whole time I was like, I don't know what happened. I just thought it was because I actually just didn't know. I was like, maybe it's just because it was long distance, but that even seemed weird to me. Anyways, after that, that's when I like started to get into a little bit more emotional health and discovering. That's when I signed up for that class and I started to be like, okay, what I'm doing is not working. I'm not finding a partner who wants me as much as I want them.
Mm.
And I think that's probably more of anxious attachment style that I have. And so I started to dive into that. And turns out that I think I have a mixture of avoidance and anxious because I am a 29-year-old woman that's single, right? So I've kind of avoided it. At this point, I started doing the self-searching and discovered that I actually don't fully believe in marriage personally.
Mm.
And I don't actually want a marriage. And I don't, there's like a small desire for me to be married, to have marriage, to be married. I don't know how to say that in a non awkward way. A small desire for marriage, a small desire for children, but I have lived my life pretty, I want to build a career for myself and be independent and be my own woman and not to bring religion and God into everything, but that's the only way I can explain this change that I realized I'm living my life for myself and it's not working. I'm not happy in my career, in my life, in my relationships of any kind, and I realized it wasn't working. So I made a choice for myself personally to hand that all over to my belief system, my divine creator. And and the God I believe in apparently believes in marriage, which worn off like the past few years because I just fling around, but nothing serious, right? Like I haven't been having anything serious. So now we're here where I finally, this is what I was crying about the other night, is I was like, I have to meet with Nate and I have to apparently get married eventually because that's what I think I believe in, even though I don't want it. That's not part of my will. And so it just doesn't sound fun to me. It doesn't sound enjoyable. It doesn't sound like how I want to do things. So when I reached out to you, I was thinking, okay, clearly I'm not at a spot where I'm open to having a long-term healthy relationship. And so I need to help myself eventually have that desire there. And so I don't know how I don't know if that's necessarily what you wanted to hear today, but that's where we're at, that we're like not really wanting to do this, but we're going to do it because it's what I believe. It's in alignment with what I believe personally. So,
Ganae, you're so cool. There's going to be so many listeners that are like, preach. I get it. I've been there.
Honestly, my dear friends, even some family, and I see them and I'm like, you are miserable. Like, do you know how much not miserable I am because I'm not married? I feel so bad. And I have those lens on where I'm like looking for marriage to be a problem. And so every story that I hear that supports that strengthens those lenses. And now I'm wearing glasses that are just like thick goggles, where I'm like, never gonna get married because this is too hard to or however, whatever things are. Yeah.
Well, yeah, we can definitely help change that, and you're at a good place to change that, because I'm the happiest married person I know. Huge advocate, and I love it to death. It's the best thing ever. So yeah, you're talking to someone who can hopefully help break that break that perception. And also, I just want to take my hat off to you, Ganae. If I had one on, I would take it off. Because of the fact that there are a lot of people out there that haven't come to the place you're at yet, where you've taken the time to honestly ask yourself hard questions. Do I actually want marriage? What are my beliefs about marriage? There are some people that never face those things, and so they continue to go through the same unhealthy relationship cycles for years and years and years. But you're not going to, because you choose to face those to face those monsters and to beat them, and you will. I have every single confidence in that. So hats off to you.
I don't know if I've been facing them. I just decided to not engage. I just thought, the way to not have these problems is to just not get married. Not have a long-term relationship. Really, it solves those problems 100%.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I was just talking to someone the other day that asked me what he should expect when he does get married. He's like, what are some things I should expect that I might not be expecting? And he's someone who's a really proactive person and likes to get a lot done throughout the day, and just like I am. And so I wanted to be real with him and up front. And I was like, your schedule is going to change completely. Right now, 100% of your time is yours. And I told him something my older brother told me. He was like, my older brother once told me, he was like, Nate, when you get married, he's like, you're gonna. And he had one child at this point. He was actually about at the stage that I'm at. He had one baby girl, and he was like, when you get married, you're gonna notice that about 50, maybe even 60% of all the time you spend either doing something for your wife or doing something with your wife. All of a sudden, 60% of your time is gone. He's like, and then you have a baby, then you have another one, and with each one, all of a sudden, like the time that you have to yourself or that you can do for things just for yourself just goes smaller, smaller, smaller. And I found myself telling that to my friend. And then I said to him, I said, and you know what? I wouldn't have it any other way. It is absolutely worth it. 100%. I love it to death. And here's why. Like when I get to like look into my cute little daughter's eyes and she smiles at me and she's learning to laugh for the first time and she recognizes my face, like it just means the world to me. You know, when I have someone to sit and hold my hand when I'm working through a bad mood and to hear me talk through it and to ask inspired questions and be patient, man, it means so much to me to be married. And to get to give that in return when my wife's having a hard day, right? And just the sheer joy that comes from these relationships coupled with the joyful learning. I don't know. That's how I've always described it. When people have asked what it's like to be married, I'm like, oh, so much joy and so much learning. And they're both such good things. They just fill me with life and energy. And yeah, there's struggles, but they're both opportunities for joy and for increased education. And so, yeah, there's some things that will be different, but oh my gosh, 100% wouldn't trade it for anything. It's incredible, Janae. It really is. And I believe we can all get there. You may not feel it right now, but I believe we can all get to a place where we do feel that as we traverse the journey you've chosen to start down.
That's beautiful, and it's such a great way to start because I don't feel those things. Like I don't feel that it's worth it. Like I don't think if I'm going to be completely honest about this, there's the problem is you are you and I am me, and I feel like what brings other people joy does not bring me joy all the time, often. Like, I feel like I find joy in things very different than many people in my circle or certain circles that I run in. And so I have a hard time believing that kind of thing, like that testimony almost, if you will, not because I don't believe you, but because I don't think it applies to me, which I know is like one of the things where it's like that works for you, not for me. But I am maybe eventually I can figure out how to create, I've talked about this with my therapist, like hopefully I can create a marriage, a relationship that I can feel joy in. Even if it looks different than like yours and Allison's,
It will, 100%. Every single marriage does, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
And I'm talking about every single healthy, happy marriage where people are glad they're married. Every single one of those looks completely different. And they bring joy in completely different ways.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I just, there's a cost to everything. There's always a trade. And I have recently in the past few years have just felt that the trade isn't worth it. Like it doesn't, the happiness that I experience as a single independent woman is great. And so I don't think that if I were to trade my time, my energy, and invest into different relationships, I don't know if it would bring me the same joy that it brings other people. I just really struggle with that thought. But that's why I've resisted. I think that's why I've in a lot of ways not wanted to engage in healthy relationships with people that would be long term. Because I've wanted what I've wanted, and I've wanted joy. And in my mind, marriage and joy are not, they're mutually exclusive entirely. But that's where I cue my spiritual belief system. And now I realize that my happiness or this is a very, very, very personal belief system, but I believe now that my personal happiness is not actually the most important thing. It's my God's will first, even if it doesn't result in my happiness, because I think long term it results in joy. And I've decided in this life that I live that I'm going to hand that over to my belief system, my God. And that means that I'm going to sacrifice even my amazing single life that I love. If my God wants me to get married and be miserable, then I'll do
You're
it.
such a soldier, Ganae.
The goal is to have marriage not be mutually exclusive from joy. So maybe, I mean, dating and relationships to be that way. So good luck. You've got your work cut out for you.
Well, thank goodness I'm not alone in supporting you with this. One thought that just came is that we have an unspeakable gift, and that's communication from our God through His Holy Ghost. And that gift, I really believe that the Holy Ghost is the best therapist. And if we start to practice listening to Him and following, following the thoughts that come, and questioning why we see things the way we do, which you've already started to do. I really think that we end up having a completely different outlook on everything. We see things completely different, right? There's new paradigms right and left, and so I have complete confidence that even if you say my work's cut out for me, that the work you're talking about is going to go much better than maybe you think from the get-go. And so I'm excited about that. And again, hats off to you for being someone that wants to do that, and that's chosen the what I believe to be the happiest path anyone can choose, which is choosing God's will above everything else. And it doesn't always look like that at the get-go, or even occasionally on the journey, but yeah, it's always worth it. I believe in a gospel of the best is yet to come, always. No matter how good something's been so far, the best is yet to come, always, for eternity. We think a past relationship might have been good. We think single life might have been good. Oh yeah, the best is yet to come, still, in something that lays ahead of us on the covenant path. So anyway, I think that's awesome. And one other thing that came to mind that I think it might be cool to talk about is an analogy that I learned from my good friend Peter Compton. He's a life coach, Peter, and we used to use this analogy in seminars we did. And the analogy is that of splinters. Have you heard about that one before?
No.
So this is a really good analogy for how we gain those fresh perspectives and how we start to feel differently. And before I dive into the analogy, I just want to say something that came to mind really strong the other day when I was coaching someone else. I said something like, listen, the problem is not what you do when you're dating. The problem is how you feel when you're dating. And that flies in the face of what a lot of dating coaches out there do. A lot of them teach technique. They teach you to act in a certain way, and to talk in a certain way, and to dress in a certain way, all to attract a mate, right? And is there value in that stuff? I think that there's a little bit of value in that stuff, because I think it's good for us to take care of ourselves and to learn to express ourselves in confident, attractive ways. But ultimately, all of that will still feel off and needy to the people we're dating if we still feel off and needy about relationships or avoidant, right? But if we're feeling on, and we're feeling secure, and we're feeling confident, and like we want a healthy relationship, all of that stuff is perceived as attractive and confident. Joking around in my wife the other day, I was like, you know what? If someone's feeling on and confident, and like they've got a healthy perspective about relationships, they could almost pick their nose in front of their date and do it in such a way that their date might just think it's funny. but not if you're feeling off, not if you're feeling anxious or avoidant, right? And so it's interesting what a superpower is to process, the reasons behind how we feel about dating and relationships. And that's where I come to the splinters. So the analogy is that throughout our lives, we have experiences that leave us feeling negative. They leave us feeling betrayed or used or undervalued or whatever. There's a negative feeling there, and oftentimes that negative feeling kind of turns into a negative belief. And what do we do as humans most of the time? We bury them, right? Now, those feelings and those beliefs from those experiences, I want to liken unto. That sounds like this is a scripture or something. Liken unto. I want to pretend like those are splinters, because have you ever gotten a sliver before that you didn't pull out right away?
Uh, I think I usually get them out pretty fast. I'm not gonna lie. But I know what happens. I've seen them. Oh no, I did. I had one actually. What am I talking about? I just had one like a couple months ago. Yes, and I know exactly what happens. It turns all pink and it hurts.
Yeah, and if you kind of like flick it where it's pink and it hurts way more than if you flicked a different finger that didn't have a splinter, right? Isn't that interesting?
Beliefs, yeah.
And
Yeah.
And isn't it interesting that, in dating, we can run into scenarios that to most people might just feel like a flick, like, oh, that didn't hurt. You just flicked me. But because they flicked a spot that reminds us of a past experience or belief, we're like, ah! And there's this like kind of extreme emotional reaction that, for the intents and purposes of what we've been talking about, that kind of extreme emotional reaction could be an anxious or avoidant attachment kind of feeling, where all of a sudden we feel anxious or all of a sudden we feel avoidant, right? When a lot of other people that don't have a splinter in that specific area of relationships wouldn't. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I even think on a deeper level, like those false or those beliefs are rooted in false or in lies anyways. So then it
Yes.
doesn't jive with our truthful selves. Anyways, also, sorry, I'm taking notes. I realized I forgot to tell you that. So I probably look like I'm not listening, but I promise. Yeah.
I got you. I'm right here. I got a pen and a notepad too. Yeah, cool. So here's my next question for you, Ganae. You're someone that I would believe has already started to learn how to best, I don't know, how it best works for you to pull out old splinters so that they can heal and not bother you anymore. Um, and I'd love to hear what you feel like that process looks like for you.
Hmm. That's awesome. Thank you for thinking that of me. I think it depends on the situation. But I think often I recognize we're going to say a trigger for lack of better terms. I recognize a trigger or a situation, a reaction. And so I name the emotions that I'm recognizing. So often I'll say, I'm noticing, let me think of a good time that I noticed this the other day. I mean, I'll just say, I notice that I'm feeling irritated or I'm feeling anxious. And so I go back, I try to dive back to the moment where I started to feel that and my interpretation of that situation, because often it's how I'm perceiving the situation that causes the reaction, the emotions. And then I ask myself what belief I drew from that situation. And does that belief hold truth? And often it doesn't, but I feel like it does. And
Mm-hmm.
then begins the process. Sometimes I'll recognize, like, oh, that's not true. And then immediately I'll feel better.
Those are
But
the best kind of splinters, the surface level ones where you're like, oh, that's a lie. Let's get that out of there. Boink.
I'm a very beautiful person. I don't know what that person was talking about. Yeah.
I
But
feel
then
so much better so fast. Those are the best kind.
really, like when I recognize, like, oh my gosh, I've just been having this thought over and over again, and it doesn't even hold truth to it, then it's easy to go. But other times I recognize, even though I don't, part of me recognizes that that's not truth, that belief system or that belief I have, my emotional body will, or another part of me does think, oh, that I have a problem here. I'm hurting here. And so what I try to do is find the root belief that I have about myself behind that pain. And sometimes the feelings are really uncomfortable. So sometimes I have to take like a few days to shift through it, study it, speak with my divine source. So sometimes it'll happen overnight. I'll wake up and be like, I just needed a snack and a good sleep, and now I'm better. And then other times it'll need like 3 or 4 weeks to
Mm.
really turn my heart and be converted about a belief system. That sounded a little scattered, but really I try to find what triggered the emotion, what belief is behind the emotion, and where did that start. Often it's in childhood, and just work through that. And what does that mean to work through something? I was just talking to somebody about that. For me, it's I ponder the thought process. I ponder from a couple different perspectives, including my own, and then that kind of helps me shift some of the some of the energy around a false belief.
Yeah. No, that's a wonderful explanation. You said so many things that I think are right, or, right on, all of it. One thing that I really loved was when you talked about how usually these splinters are lies, or at least partial lies, and the truth will set us free, right? And so the goal and the way to pull those out is with truth. It's almost like the tweezers are the truth or something.
I
Here's
love
the
it.
here's the thing though, just like there's different layers of skin that may have grown over that splinter, there's oftentimes different layers to the experiences that have kind of contributed to this trigger or this flick that really hurt. And so what I've found is, even if I can think of a specific experience that feels like it's contributing to how I'm feeling right now, um, it it doesn't necessarily, and even if I can think of a truth that kind of like refutes that, I don't necessarily feel better right away, because there's more layers I still need to address from other experiences that my mind is kind of connected and that remind me of each other. Does that make sense? And that's one of Allison and I's favorite questions when one of us is feeling off and we're feeling triggered or flicked or anxious or whatever about something, is, oh, how are you feeling? And we explain, I'm feeling like this. What does that remind you of? It's like, my siblings growing up and how I was treated occasionally, or you know, or my parents and how their relationship was, or an experience I had at school, or it reminds me of several things perhaps, and yeah, it's just so interesting that it almost acts like a stack of wooden blocks. It's the one on the top is important to take off, but it's not until we get to that bottom layer that the truths for all of those lies finally kind of set in, and it's like, oh, like I literally, like, oftentimes when I feel like I've gotten to the root of something, I literally have like a giant, like exhale, like a sigh, like a, oh, like there's this weight off, and I'm like, oh, now I feel like I'm done with that one, and I can feel good in that area. Do you relate to that at all?
Absolutely. I picture it almost like a web, like there's so many experiences that just connect to each other, and you can like work through an experience or a belief system, but then you'll find more layers sometimes. Yeah, and it is such a relief to be like, oh, this is my problem. This
Mm.
finally to find it and to kind of dissolve all the other things that were connected in that web. Um,
Yeah.
the other points of the web, though, sometimes help as well to like navigate and find that source. But I love that question. What does this remind me of? Because
Mm,
it also, it can be a memory or it can be a feeling. Like, oh, it
mm.
just reminds me of like fourth grade when that girl talked bad about me. You know, like it can be a feeling, even though I don't remember what that girl said. You know,
Yeah.
um, yeah. So I totally relate.
Yeah. So here's a question for you. Are there any splinters that I don't know that you've been like that you've recently kind of uncovered or discovered that you want to kind of talk through it all? If not, that's okay. There's other things we can talk about, but I feel like that's probably the most productive thing we can do.
Is to find a splinter. Okay.
Or even just if I can help at all in supporting you as you continue to process one you don't feel like you've fully finished with yet,
Okay.
then I'm happy to do that too.
Yeah. Let me ask you this really quick. Do you have how when you're I've never done, so I should have said this at the beginning. I've never done uh dating coaching. How do I say that? I literally don't
That's
even
the
know.
only way there is to say it, and it's never sounded quite normal.
I've never done it. So I don't know. Do you have a a plan, like a structure, or do we just go through and chat about things as they come up?
It's more of the second. I used to have more of a structure because, well, really, I would say the basic structure is I try to get to know people in their dating life. I try to figure out if they're typically more on the anxious or avoidant side of things. And then that kind of helps me know what kind of recommendations to offer. Um, and I feel like our conversation's a little bit unique in the fact that I've known you for a lot longer, and you've already kind of shared some of that stuff. Um, but I mean, that does. I'm glad you asked that because I would like to know whether you feel like I don't know at this point in time you're more on the anxious or the avoidant side of. It sounds like maybe it's more of the avoidant side of things right now. Is
I
that right?
think, yeah, I think that's right. I think I'm naturally an anxious attachment person, probably very strongly. And so, in order to avoid any of the anxiety, I think I've switched over to the avoidance side of things.
Okay.
As soon as, yeah, I feel very much avoidant. I even just had somebody text me just like 2 days ago that's like, I'm having a really hard time getting you to come over, getting you to take me up on stuff. Like,
You're like that's because I'm avoiding you and everyone else. No.
goodbye. Yeah, so I think I am currently on the avoidance side of things, because I get super anxious when in close proximity to somebody that I'm not interested in or somebody that I'm interested in, and then I sit and I overthink it a lot. However, I feel like, and you'll have to educate me on this, when it comes to like attachment style, is it also dependent on the person you're interacting with?
I would say yes. I often ask people to think of all the people they almost dated that they kind of like that they wanted to date, but then they didn't date exclusively. People they were getting to know, they're spending time with, they kind of wanted to date them, or maybe they really wanted to date them, and they almost did, but they didn't. And to think, about those people specifically, and were they feeling avoidant or anxious? Majority of those experiences.
Yeah, I think majority in my past have been anxious. I think I think it's only been a recent thing as I've gotten older that it's switched to avoidant. I think probably along the way I just I I got I started getting tired of feeling so rejected all the time. So I think
Mm,
I just started doing that myself.
I
Uh,
get it. Yeah.
I think the other thought I was having about that, anxious attachment style. Oh, the reason why I asked that of like if it depends, because I do think with certain people I'm quick to be avoidant, and with when I start to feel anxious is when Actually, I do feel anxious often just talking to people. But the other day, I was just texting a friend of mine, and when I first started talking to this person, I felt super anxious. Like, are they going to text me back? When are they going to text me back? That kind of thing.
Hmm.
But it's been a few weeks later, and I don't feel that way anymore. Like, I don't know if ever they're going to text me back, but I don't feel worried about it. So I feel like somehow in this relationship with this person, it shifted to a, like, I feel very secure in it, and I don't really know how it's going to turn out, and that's totally fine. Um, but I think the shift probably did happen internally because I was able to let it go. This is the weird, I don't know how to explain this, but like when I have something and I want it to work out so tightly, that's when I feel anxious. But then when I put it on the altar in my own brain, or if I choose to like let it go and just trust, then I don't feel, then I'm like, nah, whatever happens, happens, you know. But usually once I've reached that point, I don't want that thing anymore because I chose to let it go. So I don't really know the balance of that because let's say romantic relationship, if I'm feeling anxious about a romantic relationship because I want it to work out, and then I decide, actually, I'm going to put this on the altar. I'm going to be okay with whatever turn happens. Then I find I don't have a desire for it at all anymore. It's like it goes away entirely. Like I'm just like, oh, I don't need it. I found I don't need it. So now I don't even want it. It's
Hmm.
weird.
Yeah, it's interesting. It almost sounds like you're going from like spending a large percentage of your time in kind of anxious attachment habit type, thoughts, feelings, actions, to you're like, I just can't take this anxiety anymore. I'm going to like just kind of let it go and not want it anymore, which all of a sudden swings you over here. Rather than taking it to a place where you're like, oh, I really want it to work out. Can I get it to work out? Is it going to be right? Taking it from there to like a place where you're like, oh, well, whether this is the one I'm going to marry and have a healthy relationship with or not, that doesn't matter as much as me trusting that will happen. And I'm confident that it will. And so I'm not going to stress it. Whatever happens, happens. And yeah, I'd still like to see what happens with this person. And I still want to get to know them better. But if they choose not to look into that, that's fine. It probably just means that we weren't a good fit. like, you know, it probably simply means that there was just a mismatched level of interest, which is the rule in life. A matched level of interest is the exception, one that God brings around occasionally. And it's fun when that happens, but more often than not, even if there is interest on both sides, it's mismatched. And like I said, that's the rule, that's normal. How many people do you drive past every day that are single of the opposite gender and that you would never be on a matched level of interest with? Almost everyone. And so I don't know why when we're in an anxious attachment habit, we tend to think it's going to happen with every person we go on a date with when it's not supposed to. It's that's not those aren't the normal odds. The odds are that matched levels of interest happen just once in a while, not super frequently, and so we should almost expect that most of the people we date, even if there is interest on both sides, it probably won't be to the same degree.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, that's absolutely. I mean, I think it's a good thing that we're not out here matching with every single person too. Like that would make a problem when you're married, because we're out here still matching with everybody.
Yeah.
Um, we hit a splinter. We found
Yes.
it.
Let's go.
There's probably a whole minefield of splinters, but
Let's do it. I got my notepad ready.
yes. Okay, and I'm figuring this out right now. Okay, you said to this idea of the pendulum swing to find I'm on one side where it was a lot of anxiousness, and then I swung to the other side where it's like I have dealt enough with this that I'm now going to end up on the other side. Something about that pendulum swing literally made my knees go weak. It feels like I'm like gonna jump off a high, like I'm afraid of heights, and it feels like I'm gonna jump off a cliff because
Mm.
we talked about coming to the center. That's scary for me because
Ah.
there's something about that where there is the chance, okay, so if I open myself up to staying in that center bit where I'm open to something happening, if it doesn't, then there's sadness there. And I don't
Mm.
want to deal with that.
Being secure is scary because it's vulnerable.
No, no. Why does vulnerability always shows up? Oh, my little knees are so weak. I feel like I'm about to jump off a cliff. This is a huge problem. I don't want to. I think we better end this meeting. I don't want to do this anymore because this is going to require me to be a vulnerable person to other people.
Oh,
But
isn't it terrible?
because I can be vulnerable about some things, and that's not real vulnerability. I think that's just BS vulnerability, probably. Oh man, this really just is not. I'm not stoked, but we'll figure it out.
Can I relate for a second? There were so many times where because those that have listened to other podcast episodes or come to seminars know that I spent majority of my dating life in the anxious attachment habit of things, and there were so many times where I got to a place where I had just gone through another heartbreak or breakup, and I felt kind of numb, and I was like, well, I don't want to get my hopes up again, only to have them cut out from underneath me and come crashing back down. Like, I'm sick and tired of that. It hurts, and not to mention it's exhausting, right? And it feels pointless. It feels like God's leading me into painful dead ends. Why? Like, what's the point in continuing to open myself up and be vulnerable and trust and want a healthy relationship when I catch what looks like it could be a glimpse of that, only to have them lose interest, or for me to feel like it's not right, or whatever, and it's gone, and I'm back to feeling like, I don't know. I come crashing down, and I'm like, I feel hurt. I feel sad. I don't feel like I want to do this anymore. I'm tired of it. And there's something that God taught me in that regard that was really helpful, Janae. He taught me that there's two choices when we get to that place of not wanting to be vulnerable again. And one of them, I can't remember the exact reference. One of the places where it's outlined really well is in the Book of Mormon, and it's referenced in my book that I'm about to publish, but I can't remember the reference. In the Book of Mormon, you remember the really long war with Captain Moroni and Amalickiah? Sometime after that war, and maybe another war, it says something along the lines of, and because of the exceedingly great length of the war, many did harden their hearts. And I've been there too. Many did harden their hearts and fall away from the church. Yet many others did soften their hearts and grow closer to God through that process. And it's the exact same way in dating. It feels like a battlefield. And we have the choice as to whether or not we're going to choose to let those heartbreaks turn into apathy, or let those heartbreaks turn into empathy. And really, what was that?
Is that in your book?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Good.
And really, I believe that it's a choice between trying to continue to go at it alone and and to stop caring and to stop opening up and to not only reject pain, but reject connection, which is what we really want. Or to turn to Jesus Christ and let him change our pain and our injury into something that can then be helpful to other people because we choose to move through it and and to open up again. Right, and to be vulnerable again.
Yeah, you're speaking only truth, and I'm just over here laughing because this is why God wants me to do this. Is it's not about dating. It's about me trusting him. These past few weeks have just been, or not even few weeks, just few days, God's been like, you don't trust me. And I'm like, you're right, I don't, because you don't come through. So, but we're I really love God, I love Jesus, and I'm not do their will as much as I can. But hearing you talk, there were three thoughts
Yeah.
about that. So the first, or where you ended, the thought that came to me was opening up, staying open hearted doesn't work. God doesn't catch me. I am not safe. It's not safe. And God promised me that he would protect me, or I at least thought that I'd be okay or recover. I don't. So it's not safe to remain open-hearted, and my God doesn't. It's not working. Something about it is not working for me. So there is that.
Okay, hold on. I'm just taking notes. God promised he'd protect me, but he doesn't catch me. Was there
Like,
something else?
God doesn't catch me. Being open-hearted is not safe.
Yeah.
Being vulnerable is not safe. I mean, I think that's all usually the one it comes down to anyways, but I didn't realize in this case there's a lack of trust in God for me. There's a lack of trust that I'm going to be okay. It just doesn't work. It does not work for me to date and to look for a partner. It doesn't work. Like, I'm almost 29. I'm going to be 30 next year, and I haven't found that.
Me too.
So there's that. The other one is, the second one is, it's not, and this is kind of related, it's not an option for me. So everybody gets happy in marriage, not me. I think that's probably a really common one, but and it's just like you said, I don't. If I make the choice now that it's not for me, it can't hurt me anymore because in my head I already have the answer. Like I already know the answer. It's not for me. Now I'm safe. And honestly, Nate, I'm going to be super honest. This works. This does work because the trade that I get from not going out and dating and not finding a partner is that I'm happy. I'm safe. And I mean, every now and then you have the loneliness, and that's fine. It's a smidgen of heavy emotion compared to going out there and trying. So that's the second one. And then the third thing I learned was when I don't want something, then it no longer has the power to hurt me. So that's where it swung to the other side of the pendulum where I'm like, oh, I don't even want marriage. I don't even want it. And I like really feel that really strongly. And now because I don't want it, because I reject it first, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't have the power to hurt me, because I'm not putting myself out there and getting hurt all the time. So I'm safe. I figured it out. I don't think I need you anymore.
Oh.
We've just opened a huge can of worms, and honestly, I know it's all going to lead me back to God and Jesus in a stronger way. I know that's why they brought me here to this, is because they are pointing out to me the endless errors I have. I mean, I have endless errors and flaws, and I'm continually like feeling bad about it, but trusting God that He has space for me as I am. But when it comes to relationships, man, it's just a metaphor for God, right? Relationships are, I think. And
absolutely.
And so I've got some areas where God wants me to commune with Him, apparently.
It's like God wants us to talk to Him and have a relationship and like develop that relationship or something,
It's like, but
it's so easy to forget.
You know what? This is going to be awesome for me because I have felt so heartbroken, so heartbroken that my trust in God has been really impaired. Like in my head, it really is God doesn't want this to work out for me. It's unrighteous for me to want it for myself because He doesn't want it for me. So I need
Mm,
to not want it.
yeah. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? I feel like I can relate to a lot of these. I feel like I had something very similar to a lot of these, and uh, it's interesting how even though logically we can see the truth, emotionally we're still like, yeah, but I don't believe that at all.
Well, honestly, it's so deep in me right now that I don't even like the desire for this has gone away. Like the only reason that I came here was because I realized my desire was gone. Like
Yeah.
because God pointed out to me, this is not the plan I have for you. But somehow, somewhere along the way, you really think this is the plan I have for me. I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure. So I and I have been a blessing that I will find a young man to marry. I'm like, girl, you better bring him fast because I'm getting older and this is going to make me, if you still want a young man, in my life. So, I mean, I wrote these things down and I know our time is limited. So, so the next time we meet, we have quite a bit of clearing to do, I
Let's
guess.
do it. Let's do it. I'm so excited. Yeah, can I just end with this? I I think God's going to surprise you um, with reasons you've never thought of for reasons and blessings and benefits that you've never thought of or realized that come from choosing to be open, choosing to be vulnerable, choosing to trust. I think he's going to surprise you with like, oh, that's why it seems so pointless this whole time. It seems like pointless pain. Oh, that should be a T-shirt. um, Dating, pointless pain. That's horrible. But I think God's going to surprise you as He continues to help you navigate these splinters and come out on top of them with the revelation that I think He's going to give you, with the truths that are tailored to you and your experiences. That I think He's going to give to you. And isn't it interesting that just talking with someone else in an open, you know, I don't know, in a really open way, in a safe space, can kind of help us process those things. I don't know if you're like me, but I think the clearest when I'm talking and having a conversation with someone. If I'm trying to work through something on my own, things feel more muddled in my head, similar to prayer. I feel like I have way better prayers when I pray out loud compared to just praying, silently. And so I think there's something to be said for having these conversations with someone. And that's, that goes back to the fact that I think that marriage can help fill that need for us ongoing. Isn't that cool that like one of the blessings of marriage is having someone there to help us work through our stuff faster and to get feeling better way quicker than we would have otherwise?
Mm-hmm.
You have something you want to say? What is it?
I just wow, good job tying that in. I don't believe it, but good job. That was awesome.
Well, I think you will eventually because
Well,
it's
it just makes me
it's
nervous.
awesome.
Like it just makes my little knees go weak to hear you say talk to somebody else. I mean, this is fine, but I mean, like in a married, I don't know. That's far away. I also found the thought process. I think God doesn't want me to be happy. I think that's
Oh,
what it's a really strong belief that I have. Hmm.
yeah, that's
And that
I'm
shows up in multiple things in my life, I think.
I'm excited to talk more about that one too, and to see what we can process, and to start asking those questions of what do these feelings remind you of, what scenarios, what past
Hmm.
experiences, and um, God doesn't want me to be happy.
And I
And
think
with
before
the,
I was oh, sorry. Am I good to
oh,
go?
I was just going to say, with an emphasis on the me, God doesn't want me to be happy.
Yep. Yes, yes, yes. I think because before I think I had a strong desire to find a partner, and I think that would have made me the happiest. And he was like, "Nah, no, you don't get to have that." And I think in my head, I'm like, "Oh, it's because he doesn't want me to be happy. I'm not allowed to be too happy, you know. He doesn't want me to be too happy." So that would make me happy, I guess, to find a healthy relationship or build a healthy relationship. And he's like, "No."
Janae, I'm so excited to hear your love story when you meet the good fit, the incredible young man that's such a good fit. It's going to be the coolest love story ever, and it's going to make you happier than you ever thought you could be.
I think they're gonna have to trick me into it. At this point, they're gonna have to marry me while I'm asleep, and I'm gonna wake up and be like,
Oh, we're married?
"Oh, okay, we did." I mean, I'm pretty sure that's how it's gonna have to happen because right now it's it's a little scary, you know, to be like, "Ooh," it's so scary to think about. My little knees go weak. But Nate, thank you so much for those thoughts and for helping me to start to name off of these splinters that I have.
Yeah.
I really hope to God that he'll convert these in me and make me brave again. I just am not a very brave person anymore. I think I used to be really brave and now I'm not. And I don't even want to be brave. And I don't even want to pray to God about it because I know he'll change me. That's how stuck I am in it. Is like I don't even want the desire to desire this anymore because it's just gonna hurt. There's nothing good is gonna come up. I mean, like that's the thought process. Like nothing good will come of trying again.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we got these written down. I'm excited to talk more about them next time, to talk more about what they remind you of, and I'm really excited for things to start to click in every single one of these wooden blocks on the stack until we knock that bottom one and you're like, oh, now I feel confident that I am going to have a happy marriage and I feel open to that. Like I can't wait until that happens, and I know it will. And I think part of the thing one thing that's coming to mind that I'm excited to talk about that I think might help a little bit with that is an analogy of hunters and unicorns. So we'll leave that as a little bit of a suspenseful note for our listeners. We'll talk about hunters and unicorns next time. And yeah, any last thoughts before we wrap things up?
No, just thank you so much, and I'm already really excited for the next one. I think this is just really fun, and I'm probably gonna cry a lot, but that's okay. I'll go home and cry, but only
we're human. Our eyes sweat sometimes, and that's normal.
Yeah, I mean, my heart was beating at recognizing some of these. I started to get the same feelings that I get before I jump off a cliff. It's my body's literally having like reaction to being open to it. But I mean, if we work this out, then we know without a doubt that God is real, because this is the only way that this could be changed. There's a God that made it happen. So God. Sometimes
I think that's a big purpose he has in mind for letting us get into places we know we can't get out of alone. He's like, watch this. When we do overcome this, you will have zero doubt and zero problem telling everyone that I made that happen, and that's going to be a really good thing for them and for you.
I love it. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for making some time for me.
Okay, my friends, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to check out more of my content and services at natejclark.podia, that's Podia.com. And I'll catch you next time.